Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Kratz. I am thrilled you are here with us today. Our purpose is to share stories, ideas, and tools to help you on your diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. Let's meet this week's guest. Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. I am joined by a friend, a former student that I spent time with. I was trying to think, colleague, student. We spent time at grad school together. So it's so fun. Yes, to have you, Erayna Sargent, here with us. Welcome. We're going to talk about burnout today. And Erayna is a speaker, a mental wellness champion, and burnout relief expert. She's the founder and chief anti-burnout champion at Hooky Wellness. And she emerged in employee-centric design with mental health modalities to develop their burnout relief experience, navigating burnout, trademark. And she's empowered thousands of professionals across clients like Google, Deloitte, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and a whole bunch more. And she speaks about this, and she also has been a brand and innovation leader across workspace design and consumer goods and tech industries before launching her own business. And Erayna, it's so fun to see you again. It's been a minute since B School. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It has been a minute, but it's been exciting to watch your journey online, and conversations like these just reinforce that I made the right decision with my program selection. So I get to be part of it and connect.
Yeah. It's always serendipitous when things connect. Tell us about burnout. Like, why did you decide to start a business focused on burnout?
That's funny. I did not plan for this. Burnout planned for me is what I would say. So about 5 years ago is where this journey really started. I was at an early stage startup, great opportunity, build from basically nothing, and then like challenging situations in a lot of startups. Culture really impacted me because there's never a lack of things to do, and culture is something that's being created day by day. And so in that experience, I was blindsided by burnout, is what I'd say. It was the first time in life where working harder was no longer working. And being somebody that grew up very blue collar from Detroit, like that's what you do. You just work harder when things go wrong. And so because of that, I had to look for solutions to help myself feel better. And in that journey is where I uncovered burnout, what it was, how rampant it was, how overlooked and discounted the experience was, and how friction filled and flawed the path to relief was. And I was like, this is trash, and feeling better in the process to do so is also trash. And so being the brand innovation person that I am, I was like, this is a problem. I should solve it. And so I deep dived into the world of mental health and wellness, really that inclusive world of mental wellness, not something I was familiar with at all. As I said, blue collar, we did not talk about mental health, wellness, self-care. That's when are you working? That was always the conversation. And so as I started in this journey, it was really, how can I make this more approachable, easier, digestible for myself? And that is what I employ in the work that I do. So I have created a burnout relief support system because burnout is unique, has different faces, and it's very personal. And so the current way the market approaches it is often like a one and done, or peanut butter spreading it. All you got to do is take a nap. And I wish.
Wait, that doesn't work?
Oh my God. I wish it did. I am a huge fan of naps and sleep. Ask my family. And ask my 10-month-old. That has taken it away from me. But there's so much more that you need to do, and it's very situationally based, but it is something you can take control of and have a greater command of it. I just call it it's part of lifing. It's just one of the aspects, especially for high performance professionals. It just comes with the territory. So let's not ignore it. Let's learn about it. Let's learn how to identify it and how to mitigate and manage it as it shows up in our life, so that it can stop paralyzing us from the actions we need to take and the rest we need to have.
Yeah, I think about just how ingrained this is in our culture, especially here in the States, like how weird it is that we glorify the busyness of our lives, the lack of sleep, the hustle, all of the words that we use to describe busyness too. Like it's crazy busy. I'm insanely busy. My calendar is crazy. It's just, I've said these things too. And finding ways to navigate a culture that sends you a message that busy
Yeah.
is good. And your health, maybe that's something like to wait on or somehow fix later. Like I remember when we were in business school together, just the sidebar here for one sec. Remember, so they had this thing called the core the first
Oh, Jesus.
semester where they purposely torture you. I mean, come on, it's
You're trying to trigger me right now.
bad memories. And I am somebody that prioritizes sleep. Like I am not somebody that studies like crams the night before, but all of those habits were like out the window because everyone is sleeping like 4 hours a night, like never getting all your work done because they purposely give you too much. And then had these like 3-hour exams on Fridays that like blew your mind. Like
Hmm.
people got chronically ill. Like I had a friend,
Yeah.
a good friend of ours, like that, like had a cough so bad that she like broke one of her ribs. Like it was like
I did not know
cracked.
about
Like,
that.
it's like-
Oh
and it
my
was like,
God.
oh yeah, we just have to wait till January to get better. And it's like, what? So anyway, that was just one snapshot. I'm sure listeners, if you've worked for a startup, like
Yeah.
and like other
Very familiar.
places, these toxic workplace behaviors are somewhat normalized. How do we break free of these cycles that like send us messages like we always have to be on?
Yeah, that yeah, you hit on a number of really good points. I mean, we've grown up in hustle culture. Like
Yeah.
we just adopted it, accepted it,
Hmm.
and so we live by it.
Yep.
And so when it comes to what can we do, it's a massive unlearning
Yep.
that we need to do. Like it's not it, I get excited by the growth in conversations about rest. That's
Hmm.
awesome. So many hashtags, so many people talking about just go rest. I'm in my easy season or I'm in this season. And it's like,
Hmm.
that's great in theory. But how do we do that? Because if you are conditioned to perform and to achieve and to go, it's actually not that easy to know how to slow down and to change your
Hmm.
pace. So I actually, in my journey, like my burnout, I have all the stages, like all the stages, phases, symptoms. That's why I get so passionate about the work that I do because I'm like, yep, been there, got the t-shirt, literally makes them. Like we need to do something different because if we can avoid like the impact that this can have, like we can unlock so much power with people. But it took for my therapist to put me on timeout. And I say it and it sounds funny, but it's she literally did that. The long and short, I decided to take leave for a couple of weeks because it was beyond at that point in the middle of the burnout stuff. I was also having my life lifing, my dad being sick with cancer and everything else. And I took leave and then I proceeded in that first week to put down my daytime laptop and pick up my work laptop, my Hooky laptop. And my therapist was like, how's it going? I told her the truth. And she's like, no, 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 that is not what we're here for. You are taking leave to take a break. So she put me on timeout and was like, between 12 and 5, at least 3 days out of the week, you cannot work. You cannot read white papers. You cannot write emails. You cannot do this, that, do anything other than work. And so it took for her to do that for me to actually take the steps and slow down. And then here we go, Hooky Wellness, like the power of playing hooky. It is truly in there that you can find your relief, but it takes steps and it takes focus and it takes support to learn how to change your pace for those who are used to sprinting all of their life. I mean, think about how we're conditioned. It's part of the training, it's what you do. Um, and so it's been a lot of that over the past few years, a lot of unlearning. I recently wrote an article for Well and Good about how I've been changing my relationship with productivity because that's where we're starting to get into it. And then I get really excited with the work that I do. I'm going into workplaces with some of these professionals across these like really influential culture building orgs. But I've also had the privilege of supporting the Kelley School of Business like for the past 3 years. I've been really going in and talking about mental wellness, burnout relief, and burnout support preemptively to the full-time MBA students. So they're learning and equipping themselves in the program, which I applaud the program for paying attention. And then they're able to go into the workforce and to start changing the culture as soon as they arrive
Oh,
and to
that's
like
so cool.
contribute. Yeah,
Full
it's
circle on that
yeah.
story. Like your own challenge, your therapist timeout, the
Yeah.
hooky. wellness brand starting, and then full circle back to like some of the origins of that,
Mm,
helping students that are going to come into the workforce like learn the right patterns first. And I think there's so many ties here, right? Because we focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion on our podcast, and we know that there are so many ties to burnout and doing the hard work like diversity work can be.
mhm.
So I'm curious for our listeners that might have been doing DEI for a while, or, touch upon hard issues in the workplace, like what recommendations might you have for them to do their own if they're not able to have like someone tell them? Like
Yeah,
how do you advocate for yourself and your own mental health?
that's real. So someone tell them. I will tell them that they are somewhere in the burnout cycle because everyone is somewhere in the burnout cycle. So there's no need to feel like a failure anytime the word burnout comes up. And if you start to identify as you learn more about it, it's just something that happens when you try to give away more than what you have to give. And for those, especially that do DEI work, that is common. It is very much a industry and a work environment where you're charged with taking care of others. And so when you're so used to pouring into others, it's very easy to overlook pouring into yourself. And so how can you use that same energy and passion that you have for others and apply it to yourself? Because you cannot do your work if you're not taking care of yourself. That's the new part of the conversation that we're talking about. And so, especially for those, like I always say, I was very proud of this quote. Burnout doesn't discriminate, but it does have its favorites. And so the favorites, women, Black professionals, and those who work in DEI type work, we're seeing them burning out at disproportionate rates. You see DEI leadership actually having a lower tenure than other C-suite members. You're seeing that emotional exhaustion really going because the work that you do is tied to your emotions. And so when it comes to what can you do is one, recognizing that you're human, and recognizing that a part of your work is pouring out of yourself. So if you're doing that, remind yourself, how do you pour back in? And then also recognizing that you have the ability, as well as sort of the responsibility of creating emotional, mental, and physical boundaries around the work that you do. And that you can do that, like it's within your purview, and it doesn't make you bad at your job or a bad person because you recognize that you can't help everyone all the time, but it's a more of a matter of what are your priorities? What are those things that you're really passionate about? And how can you support them while also supporting yourself? So if it's a matter of creating real work hours, if it's a matter of I'm only going to take on 1 to 2 projects that are extremely close to my heart and take a lot more emotion, you can do that. And then you can always shift later. Everything is like it's all temporary and you can change as your bandwidth in life changes. So that's some of the things about the DEI space specifically, because it's a whole nother level of pressure and challenges already. So we need
Yeah.
you. Want to
Well,
make
and
sure
it's
you're
emotional labor, right? The
extremely.
compassion, like you said, the feelings work, I feel like feels even more like a day in the DI space. And
Oh
I've
my
limited
goodness.
my days. I mean, I've recognized this over the last 3 to 4 years, even, 8-hour days, like a 12-hour day, in other words.
Yep.
So I've reduced my hours here. We try to work 6.5 hour days, and even are experimenting with a 4-day work week next year as a way to prevent burnout. Because the
Mhm.
stories you hear, I mean, you can only hear so many of like the similar story to be like, oh my gosh, like this is a huge problem. Why don't people care more about this? And then
Yep.
you feel kind of powerless in helping people solve massive problems that have been around for centuries. So listeners, if you're experiencing this, I love your quote, Erayna. So burnout does discriminate. Is that
Not, it does not discriminate, but it
does
does have.
not discriminate? Yes, but it tends to favor women and
Yes.
people of color. Yes. And especially women of color that are experiencing all of the intersectional dimensions of this. So appreciate that. I think for me, what resonates about what you said is identify where you're at, like identify your own burnout triggers. So if you're getting super exhausted or finding yourself drinking a little bit too much or not doing your regular wellness habits, finding ways to build in those wellness habits. I think the thing, Erayna, that's worked well for for me and for my clients is to bookend your day, like to find healthful strategies at the beginning and end of the workday so that you have a good way to start up proactively, whether that's journaling, working out, like spending time with your family, or like after your workday to decompress, like we were talking about, like walking, physically moving, use baths, whatever you can. And the techniques don't always help, right? It's a mindset shift, I think, that people have to pay attention to. You can't just like, whoa, it changed the whole day. But building in some healthy boundaries and bookends, I'm hearing you say that. Erayna, I wonder, you said like burnout is a cycle. How do you recognize the cycle? Like how do you identify where you are and how to process through that cycle?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, you can come to Hooky Wellness to get your personalized support and understanding, comprehensive understanding of your situation. But when it comes to it, uh, depending upon which white papers that you read, people talk about burnout and cycle and stages and phases. It's all the same thing. It's not a zero. It's not binary. It really has shades of gray. And so the things of being to be aware of is key warning flags within the cycle. First stage, first warning flag is exhaustion. This is what we often hear about. This is why people say take a nap. But when you're dealing with burnout, which is what happens when you have chronic stress or unmanaged stress, burnout results. So you're beyond tired. No matter how much sleep or naps you're getting, you're still like exhausted. That is an early warning flag that something else needs to change. Another big early one is you're working harder but producing less. That's a sneaky symptom because you still have to deliver often. So it's a snowball effect. And so if you're finding that it's taking you 2 to 3 times as long to do something, that is a warning flag, and something you can start changing. Then you start to move through the cycle and you're starting to have warning flags that tie into detachment. So pulling away from things that bring you joy, people that bring you joy or matter in your life. That is an interesting one because as you talk about those things that you can add into your life, those things you're often pulling away from are your relief valves. Those are how you let off stress. So if you find yourself pulling away from the things that bring you joy, those are the very things you need to start including in your life and prioritizing. And then last, another big warning flag for the later side part of the cycle is like a increased cynicism. So where cynicism, whether it be for those around you, experiences or situations, as well as within yourself. So I find a lot of clients or individuals will say, I feel like a failure in the deep burnout. That's where it gets extremely intense and why I do the work that I do, because now I find that we're talking about burnout. So often people are trying to interchange burnout and stress. Those are not equal. They are not. They are on the same in the same space, on the same plane, but burnout is what results when you don't manage your stress. And burnout can really, really, really go deep internal, emotional, and mental shifts that you can control once you understand it and you can manage with the right support team of mental health and wellness experts. But those are some of the warning flags and how you can track without having like deeper information. But if you're interested, this is truly the work that I do in creating that comprehensive view of like, what is going on? What are some of those drivers? What are some of those accelerators that you might be overlooking and unforeseen barriers to your relief? And then here's what you can start doing about it. Because it takes focus. It will take energy to get out of burnout and to mitigate your symptoms. But once you have that clarity and understanding of how it will help you, that's how you can start. And you don't have to do everything at the same time. It's about taking those small steps that can help you find relief and create the space to do the hard work.
That's cool. I love that. I love knowing like the triggers and like what are the little symptoms of the much bigger problem. I find that interesting that people withdraw from the very support mechanisms that they need the most
Well, you
at the
don't have
time.
energy.
Yeah.
You don't have energy, you're feeling exhausted, and you just are blah. And
Yeah.
so we've all had those days. And so it's one thing to have a blah day and you're like, I don't want to do anything. But if that's turning into weeks, months, like that's how the very coping mechanisms that you put in your life, that's how you start to pull away from them.
Yeah.
And it just pounds what's already going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think listeners, if any of these things resonate with you and it's not just a day here and there, but a series of days, it sounds like a series of
Yes.
weeks, like get help. And I know, Erayna, you have some great tools at Hooky Wellness. Tell our listeners, like what is the process for setting that plan in place? Like once you've identified some of those triggers, like the real big stressors, what's leading to the burnout, how do you design a plan that works?
Yeah. It's a very MBA answer of it depends, which is exactly why I built Hooky, because it depends, because figuring out what you need can be just as complicated as dealing with what you are battling. And so that's why my approach, I'd use like design thinking and mental wellness. So it's really allowing you to get a comprehensive view of what's going on, think creatively about what are solutions and potential paths, and then start testing, iterating, and figuring out what works for you. Um, and if you don't know where to start, one, as I said, Hooky Wellness, but a lot of introspection and journaling is a great place to start. So often people say, I feel off, or I think I'm dealing with burnout, but you don't recognize what are the symptoms that are starting to show up. And that is how you can know what to do about it. Because if you're dealing with more physical symptoms, there are actions you can take. If you're dealing emotional, mental, those are slightly different paths. And it also speaks to what are the support systems and experts you should have on what I call your burnout battle team. Everyone deserves a therapist, but there's also, what are you doing in the wellness side? What are you doing from the personal side? Who are your cheerleaders? Who's telling you that radical candor truth? So really thinking about it in that way. And so it's funny, as I talk to people, they're like, that sounds amazing. That's more work. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And that's where we step in to help you just sort through that so you can start doing the hard stuff, because unlearning is hard. So understanding what you have to unlearn, if I can give you a shortcut to get to the work, then that's what I'm here for. Because we got to do something, because burnout's not going away. People going back to the office, it's actually going to get worse, because we've now got a hit of what the other part of life could be. And there's a huge shift in values these past few years, and people unwilling to sacrifice their personal life for their professional life, but still having the desire to achieve. How do we blend that? We can't just, everybody's bank account's not set on Bali, is what I like to say. Like, we cannot eat, love, pray our way away from burnout. Like, that's just not feasible to just run away.
Can we just
So,
lean in too while we're at it?
yes, leaning in a little too hard is what got us here. I do believe in leaning in, but like, especially for the favorites, we've been leaning in for a while.
Yeah,
So,
we have.
well,
Yeah.
time.
I love this. I love what you shared with the cycle, knowing where you're at on the cycle, having the plan, making it easier, having your trusted battle team. Love that. Erayna, it has been so fun to be with you. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you and Hooky Wellness.
Thank you. It was great to talk with you as well. I love the work that you're doing. So to connect with Hooky, on our website, which is just hookywellness.com, HOOKY, wellness.com. I'm also on Instagram. Hooky's on Instagram, Hooky Wellness. I'm on Instagram as the Burnout Whisperer, as well as on LinkedIn. But if you are looking for support for yourself and or your workplace team or community, ERGs, development groups, I support all of the above. So really excited to continue conversations, to support people in their burnout relief journey, and, to do what we can and do some unlearning and help us all feel a lot better in our lives. So
That's
I
great.
always like to say, if you remember nothing else, work hard and self-care harder. That's the balance we need in our lives.
Yes, yes, we need to take these things seriously. And I think if your employee resource group or DEI council is looking for a speaker, what a great topic. I know Erayna is very passionate about DEI as we are, our listeners. So a great topic to talk about how to battle burnout in the workplace. Thanks so much, Erayna, for being with us today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Allies are necessary for positive change. If you are on the journey to becoming an ally, we invite you to participate in our brand new Lead Like an Ally online program, or get a copy of our new book, Allyship in Action, available on Amazon. Both are helpful tools that meet leaders where they're at and help provide tools for professional and personal settings. Head over to nextpivotpoint.com to get started today.